a channel that brings you original behind-the-scenes conversations for the banking and fintech industries.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another wonderful episode of Travillian Next. Very, very timely episode. Very happy to have my friend on here. Known Gene for years. Great to have you on, Gene.
Thanks a lot, Keith. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course, of course. And Gene, you're a consultant working with a lot of sponsor banks, fintechs, crypto, digital asset companies. So I think this is a perfect time to have you on to discuss stablecoins and banks. It's all over the news. I'm doing a search right now for a company payments officer that has to do with stablecoins. There's articles, it seems, come out every day. So I really wanted to get, your expert opinion on the market right now and what you're seeing. So I would love to know kind of, as we have this new administration, Trump administration has been in for about a month now. We have David Sachs, as the crypto and AI czar. Read my notes here. We have the new head of the OCC, Jonathan Gould. Hopefully I pronounced his name right there. FDIC, Travis Hill. CFPB, Russell Voigt. So what do these hirings say from your perspective, Gene, about digital assets, stablecoins, and that industry right now?
Yeah, so I think a lot of these players have been around in the bank regulatory space for some time. So I don't think it's a complete radical change and departure from many of the historic players that have been in place. That said, I do think that the big change will come through Congress with either the Genius or Stable Act, which is specifically pointing towards stablecoins. And I think a lot of the banks are holding their breath, waiting to see what happens there before they make their next move. Many, I think, are poised to enter the stablecoin space. Also, I think with the previous Trump administration, with Brian Brooks at the OCC, he released some interpretive letters around stable coins and crypto in general as it relates to banking. And I think many of those are very prescient and will come to light under this new administration. Now, Michael Hsu also, I believe, issued an interpretive letter that said any of these activities related to crypto require OCC approval. Yeah. And I think now the administration seems to be more crypto stablecoin friendly. So I think we'll see some of those approvals come through.
Yeah, that's great. And you said the Stable Act, is that moving through Congress right now? So that'll outline kind of the rules and how banks can, look at the regulators and kind of follow their guidance.
That's exactly right. The Stable Act as well as the Genius Act. I have a feeling the Genius Act may be the one that goes through because I think it's more specific in certain areas with regard to custody issuing. It puts a cap on some large issuers over 10 billion having to go through federal regulatory supervision, and also it's a bipartisan bill. So I think there's a greater likelihood that that'll get passed.
Yeah, that's great, Gene. Thanks for the update. I know your clients are leaning on you for interpreting kind of what's happening and guidance, especially on the risk and compliance front. On the bank side, community bank side, stable coins. I just wrote a kind of article for Travillian Next a few weeks ago. Just here's what a stable coin is. This is how it's different than Bitcoin or these meme coins. But I would love your perspective on how this could be a disruptive technology and why community banks should be looking at this and not just disregarding it because of all the noise out there in the market.
Yeah, absolutely, Keith. I think it's really interesting because I view it as an evolution. So, I mean, if we think about banking as a service and the establishment of these FBO accounts, which are pooled accounts where many of the fintechs could have subledgers attached to them. And that's where they introduced a lot of the more advanced technology that our core banking systems couldn't handle. I think if we jump to stable coins, it's going to the next level because it's also creating a new payment layer as well as programmable money by way of smart contracts.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of different advantages that stable coins introduce, um, albeit outside of the Fed rails, and giving more flexibility for technology companies to build all kinds of things, in terms of giving yield to customers, um, programmable money, doing things in secure ways. So I think it's a really interesting time, because I think we're going to see many different types of use cases that haven't even been conjured up yet.
Yeah, because I think you're mentioning, just blockchain in general. Um,
Absolutely.
and I remember blockchain 3 years ago was really starting to take off, and then kind of the crypto winter happened. But I feel, I know we talked about this before, the crypto spring is here, and hopefully heading into the summer. Um, so, as a community bank, what are some of the first steps that you think banks should take? And then also, Travillian, talent wise, things like that. What what are some of the first steps, and also what types of talent do banks need to have to really pursue this stablecoin this stablecoin strategy?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think where I would start is thinking about the existing interpretive letters that are out there for the OCC.
Mm-hmm.
And if banks want to participate in uh, collaborating with payment companies that use stable coins, then I think first and foremost, I would wait for the Genius or the Stable Act to pass,
Yeah.
so that there's a little bit more regulatory clarity there. But then I think soon thereafter, if a bank wants to have a stablecoin strategy, the first thing that I would do is hire personnel from a risk management
Mm-hmm.
standpoint to be able to understand the risks associated with stablecoins, um, whether it be from a FinCrime standpoint and be able to use blockchain analytic tools like TRM Labs or Elliptic or chain analysis. Um, and then also looking at evaluating the different types of stable coins. Where are the proof of reserves? What are they investing in fact, the Genius Act dictates what are the types of investments that they can be in, and they are all government related treasuries or money market funds that are USD denominated, very liquid, and fairly short term as well. So, assuming that the Genius Act passes and those restrictions are in place, I think it kind of makes the risk manager's job a little bit easier in terms of
Yeah. At
evaluating
least
them,
you have
because
some
it
rules,
becomes
right?
very finite
Yeah.
exactly what they
Yeah.
can invest in, and then being able to prove those reserves.
Has
I
that been
think
the issue kind of the last few years, Gene? There just hasn't been enough clarity from the government. Um,
I think that's one of the
Guardrails, things you need to have in place to really, start this
absolutely.
strategy. Yeah.
I think with the SEC and other, the SEC in particular, I think took a position of enforcement by action. So rather than laying out what the rules are and then bringing down the hammer, if people don't comply with those rules, it was more, when we see it, we'll know it. But we're, I think now we're looking to provide more regulatory clarity. I know Trump has the new Mark Weda, who I believe is the new SEC chair,
Mm-hmm.
is the chair of a working group, along with Paul Atkins, as you mentioned, a separate working group that are looking to provide a lot more clarity. But I think the other aspect of it, Keith, is that the regulators just never approved a lot of these banks that were applying to go under these interpretive letters and be able to
Yeah.
do some of the things that Brian Brooks had proposed when he was comptroller of the currency.
Yeah. No, um, I feel a more collaborative environment right now between fintechs, banks, the government, uh, conversations, working groups. Uh, that's all positive. If you
I
can
couldn't
come to
agree
an
more.
agreement that is safe for the banks, safe for the customers, but also you don't want to fall behind in this technology, especially stablecoin. Was listening to a David Sachs interview. This was 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he said we want the reserve currency to stay, the world's reserve currency to stay the dollar, and by having stable coins pegged to the dollar, we want to be at the forefront of that. So it's very important that we have, the government and private industry working together to keep the dollar as the dominant reserve currency for the world. It just makes sense. And then the technology, like you said, not even going down the road of smart contracts and the efficiencies around money movement that can be built into blockchain is really, really amazing. And then on the fintech side, you're working with a lot of digital asset firms too, right?
A couple of them. I wouldn't say a lot, but yeah, a couple of them.
Yeah. Have you seen, an uptick in, just requests, or what are some of the questions coming from the digital asset side? Working with banks, do they need to work with banks? Are they trying to get into kind of the community bank sector?
Yeah, I've seen a flurry of activity and inbounds from digital asset companies, probably starting about midway or the fall of last year. And I think it was even before there was a view that that the government would be more crypto friendly. So I'm not sure exactly what was the driver of that in particular, but there definitely has been a lot more interest and a lot more activity there. With respect to collaboration with community banks, I think it's very difficult to do that with the fall of Signature and Silvergate
Yeah.
that had their networks. That said, I think there are still a few banks out there that are looking, but I think most are pausing until they can see what happens with these new acts that will hopefully come to pass. And then there are other players as well that are using other that already are plugged into community banks and already are making an infrastructure play that stable companies can plug into.
Yeah. So, kind of from your expert position here, Gene, what are some of your predictions? Predictions are always fun, right? Because you can look back a year from now and see if any came true. But any predictions around stable coins and banks over the next year or two, especially the market, more banks, bigger banks, smaller banks moving into this space. What are some of the trends do you see over the next couple of years?
Well, I'm going to take an optimistic view here.
Yeah, that's what we like here. Yeah, be optimistic, Gene. Come on. Doesn't cost you a dime to be optimistic.
Yeah, exactly. I think some of these OCC charter banks will ask the OCC for permission approval to engage in stable coins in particular. Maybe some will even go further and engage in broader crypto. But I think some of those will get passed in the coming years. And I think it's going to become more commonplace for crypto companies and banks to work together and build some really interesting things. I think it's really almost a clean slate in terms of what can be built. I feel like we're in the first inning of like the fintech, what was the fintech era. Now fintech is probably in the fifth inning or something like that. But with stable coins and what could be built on blockchain, I think we're really in early days here. So it's an exciting time. I also think that the government may reconsider whether they want to do CBDCs. I could be totally off on that because I was surprised that Trump's executive order, laid down the hammer and said, we're not going to pursue CBDCs. But I think if you take a step back and look at, the Department of Government Efficiency and what they're doing, I mean, what better way to control corruption than have an immutable ledger that tracked where all the government funds were going, right? So I think that could be a really interesting idea, especially as we approach 2030, where it may be difficult to fund Social Security and some other mandated programs, and we could be running into a bit of a U.S. government balance sheet crisis.
Yeah, it's a whole nother episode. Imagine getting the entire government trillions of dollars, their expenditures and payments on a blockchain. That would be pretty amazing.
It would be
I
amazing.
think
Yeah.
I can't. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I think we're just in the, as you said, the first inning of finding out, what's in this budget or whatever. It's very
Right.
interesting as we do a little digging. But yeah, no, those are great points. So, kind of to cap off, Gene, you know, stable coins are here to stay. They're going to grow.
Hmm.
You got to have the right risk and compliance in place. It seems like a lot of banks and fintechs are waiting for the government to kind of
Hmm.
sign off or pass these bills. So
Right.
they have some rules here and some guidelines. Um, but any parting thoughts from your standpoint? I would say if you're interested in digital assets or looking at digital assets, give Gene a call. That would be my
I
first
appreciate that.
piece of advice. I can find the talent to help you, uh, you know, uh, execute that strategy, but you really need to build a strategy first and call Gene. He'll help you with that. So, any parting thoughts as we enter the first inning here? I think we're still in spring training with
Well,
stable coins.
thinking about Travillian and where the talent will come from, I think on one hand there's the financial risk, looking at liquidity and capital. Now that the SEC has rescinded SAB 121, banks don't have to put crypto on balance sheet, which is a big boon for capital,
Yeah,
and that's with SAB 122. So I think the financial risk aspect is really important. The fin crime aspect is going to be really important, and I think there's a lot of new territory because many AML officers and fin crime folks have not used blockchain analytics, and I think what we all know is that actually there's quite a bit of transparency in terms of what you can trace and see on the blockchain as opposed to dollars. Um, and so it's a little bit ironic, but I actually, yes, there is some privacy and anonymity, but I think in the context of banks where KYC is happening, things are going to be traceable, and there actually may be some privacy issues related to
yeah,
that. So
yeah.
I would say that from a resource standpoint, I would call out to financial risk managers and FinCrime professionals to look towards the future and see if there's an
Yeah.
opportunity there.
Yeah, risk and compliance has been, especially for sponsor banks, but across the board, has been very sought after talent the
Hmm.
last 3 or 4 years. Specifically, talent that understands all the regulations and banking compliance, but also is very intrigued by technology
Hmm.
and innovation. Because there's a lot on the reg tech side with AI and everything you can
Oh yeah.
help implement to make it more efficient. I think, uh, yeah, I think you really can tap into these different technologies, and I think especially with digital assets and stablecoins, you're going to need some oversight there. So you might need technology companies to help out there. But
Absolutely.
no, Gene, any other thoughts as we wrap up here? I think stablecoins, very fascinating. Um, Blockchain, of course, not just for stablecoins, but for all different types of technology. And like you said, we're very early in this game. So it'll be really interesting to see where it goes. But I feel like this year is the year where at least we're having some momentum. There's some momentum, and then it's going to gather speed, hopefully. But last couple of years, it felt like it was just stuck in the mud. So I'm glad the truck is up out of the mud and at least moving forward a little bit here.
Yeah, likewise, Keith. I think it's going to be really interesting. I guess my parting thought would be, if stable coins really take off and become a large part of the economy, it'll be interesting for the Fed to really, how do they think about macroeconomic measures like M1 and M2? Where does the stable coin fit in that
Oh yeah,
velocity? And as well as, stable coins can be used anywhere within the world. So how are they going to track what's in the US or not? I mean, I feel like where it's going
yeah,
is like the Federal Reserve does need to step in at some point and either create CBDCs or something along those lines. Otherwise, stablecoins could eat up all the all the
Yeah, I
dollars.
was
I don't
thinking
know
about
how
that,
they
but
get there.
you need to have the deposits though, right? Somewhere, right?
That's right. You need
So the deposits
reserve.
have to. So hopefully the deposits stay with the banks. I would think, right?
True.
Yeah,
True.
yeah, yeah. Money flying around. I'm not an expert like you. It's just it's pretty crazy. How do you track it? Where is it? Money supply. That's above my pay grade. But
That's right. Yeah. It's creating new money supply in
yeah,
some ways.
yeah. But Gene, thanks a ton, man. Really appreciate it. Glad you could come on. Really enjoy speaking with you and getting your insights on this industry. But appreciate you being on today.
Thanks so much for the opportunity, Keith. I really enjoyed it.
Of course. Thanks, Gene. Have a
Thanks.
good day.